Dear students, GPS CLAT Academy at Gyanodaya, a senior secondary school at Sikar, supports its students in their CLAT preparation. We have started a lecture series which will be delivered to you on a daily basis on YouTube.
Yes. So this is about detention. Detention can be ordered on the ground of violation of law. Only two circumstances are there in which a person may be detained. Number one, when he has committed an offense. In response to that, he can be detained. But then that is a temporary detention, and the trial is still pending. So the detention will be a detention. This will be a curative detention, and pending curative detention, he may be enlarged at bail if it appears that the trial is going to take long, and there is no irrepudiable evidence which shows he has committed the crime. So he will be enlarged on bail. Now, that is one circumstance. There's another circumstance is the preventive detention. When a person is suspected of having committed a crime and then he is detained, that kind of detention is not strictly speaking under the court purview, but still writ of habeas corpus can lie to cure such detention if it is illegal. Under Article 22 of the Constitution, such detention is made by the government, and the government constitutes a board for consideration of the representation of the detained individual. Basically, first representation is given to the government. The steps include number one, that the government gives the individual conclusions of facts which are called grounds as to why he is being detained. Then, secondly, his representation that he gives is considered by the government. The government has two options then. It may free the detainee or it may continue with the detention. If the detention continues beyond the 3 months period, then the case is to be referred to an independent, you can say a sort of tribunal or a board, preventive detention board, and which will have some judicial representation, maybe a retired high court judge or a lawyer with sufficient experience. So you will have that board considering the representation. Then the board may order the detention to be continued or may order the detainee to be freed. Then, of course, the detainee can also approach the High Court against the decision of the government and against the decision of the board. And primarily against the decision of the board because board comes in after a period of time, and then the board determines whether or not the detention should be continued. So you have two kinds of detentions. Those two kinds of detentions are, one is preventive detention and another is the curative detention. Curative detention in those cases where the accused has committed an offense. But in those cases where the person detained, the detainee, he can't still be called an accused because he has not committed any offense. But he is suspected of having committed an offense. Then in that case, or he is likely to commit an offense. And in order to prevent him from committing the offense, then preventive detention is ordered. Preventive detention is usually ordered for serious crimes, such as crimes of the nature of terrorism, and whereas curative detention is usually for crimes which pertain to law and order. So now here the case of the Bangladeshi, the foreigners who have come, the foreign migrants who have come to India and settled into India way back. Basically, their detention is being considered by the government, but the problem here is they don't fall in either of the two categories. They are not people who are accused of having committed an offense, nor are they people who are detainees under some preventive detention law. So how the author seeks to appreciate as to in these circumstances, how can the executive detain such individuals? Where is the power for detention of such individuals? Detention or release, the author says, are the prerogative of the courts. If the executive takes over these processes, then what happens of the principle of judicial independence? So these are basically the thought-provoking issues that the author arises. Of course, the author also considers um, uh, cross-border jurisprudence in Australian case where the court declared that the government does not have the power of indefinite detention in cases where the deportation was not possible. So that kind of jurisprudence is sought to be implemented in India also. So this is broadly the article that it talks about. Now um, let us come to the questions. Now here it is, question 97. Whoever has marked it incorrect, please take it up. I think who has marked it incorrect? I don't know. Please take it up. There are only two kids. One is Ryan and one is Priyanka. So take it one by one. Ryan, you have not submitted the response, right?
No, sir.
Ryan, submit the response. I mean, you have your exam on 14th July. I can appreciate the pressure pressure this time must be very great. I can appreciate that. All right. Go ahead.
So
Please
this
take up the
question talks
questions.
about the individuals who are suspected of being undocumented migrants, and they are detained indefinitely without any trial or any judicial review. And the government argues that such detention is necessary for national security. And the question here is the what is the correct legal position here? And uh, I think option A should be the right answer because
Yes. Yes.
indefinite detention is not permitted under Article 21 of the Constitution. It grants personal liberty to everyone, not only citizens.
Besides, national security as a ground for can be a ground for preventive detention. Whereas in this case, the author does not say any charges have been framed against the migrants on the grounds of national security. So that is highly untenable. Yes, please come to question number 8. This also seems 98. This also seems to be incorrect. Yes. So basically, the article, straightforward article, basically gives us some insights into the process of uh, how the voter IDs are issued and uh, what are the loopholes in the system because of which some people are able to acquire voter IDs and cast their vote even though they are not citizens of India. And the system that has been devised is, is basically that you approach the electoral officer, electoral registration officer, and you present your claim for a voter ID. Now, uh, voter ID is issued to you. You don't have to, prove your citizenship, although they do fill a declaration form. Or if there is an objection, then in that case, the objector as well as the person who has acquired the voter ID, the objector will have to bring the proof of the non-citizenship of the person who has acquired the voter ID, and simultaneously the person who has acquired the voter ID will also have to justify his claim. If he fails, then in that case there can be stringent action on him, depending on the depending on his situation. Then, in case of married women who change their names, so the option is to consider their documents of prior to marriage, and also option is to consider the testimony of the headman of the receiving village as well as the village from which the woman comes. So that now these are basically the procedures of how to acquire it. And there are certain normative aspects like Article 326, what it provides. And I think that's sufficient. Let us move forward. So the article basically talks about what leads to a nation becoming great in terms of a great economy. And the author says that you can't really trace greatness of a nation or the power of a nation, economic power of a nation, to uh, a few sectors, to outstanding performance in a few sectors, but you have to trace it at the more granular level, at a lower level, and that is what is the human resource that understands the technology which has been deployed, how much the technology has percolated to small firms, to firms which are entrepreneur-led firms. So that is what is the marker for the greatness or otherwise of a nation. And in this, he gives the examples of United States and compares the same with China. That China doesn't have such a technological infusion as the United States has, and therefore the game is not yet over for United States, even though the Chinese economy in terms of size might be set to overtake the US economy. And the author goes into economic history also and argues that Britain was great not because of any specific sector, but because they knew how to deploy machines um, across various sectors. Likewise, he gives example of Japan, he gives examples of Germany. And in essence, what he argues is it is the general purpose technologies which lead to economic enhancement. So basically, in other words, what he's saying is that technology must go down, deep down, and it must come to the single entrepreneur, to the small firms, and the small firms how they innovate using that technology. That is what determines the economic strength of a nation. A straightforward article, and we need not spend too much time on this. Chaliye aage. Please take up the questions. First one is correct, second one is not correct. Please take it up. 26. Yes. So basically, in this article, the author talks about how to achieve the net zero emission of 2070, the target that we have given to ourselves. Now, for this, the author identifies one of the most heavily polluting sectors of our economy, and which is the logistics sector. And so much so that it alone contributes nearly 15% of the total emissions. So this requires urgent attention. And the author basically identifies identifies as various sectors in the logistics area, and various sectors. The author says that you switch from road transport to rail transport, because road transport of the nearly 15% pollution or 15% greenhouse gas emissions which logistics sector contributes, nearly 88% comes from road transport. So we have to take off road transport from fossil fuels. And one of the initiatives in this behalf, which is mentioned by the author, is basically the converting, making road transport mimic rail transport in the sense that you have dedicated lanes, and in those dedicated lanes you have provided overhead electric power. So the trucks, instead of using diesel and other fossil fuels, will basically run on the overhead electric cables. If that is the situation, then there will be little difference between road and rail transport. Then another sector that he talks about, in fact, he takes up almost the entire logistics sector. Also the oceanic transport, also the inland transport. For them also he makes the similar prescriptions that we have to take them off fossil fuels, and we have to put them on sustainable alternatives such as solar, wind energy, renewables like electricity, and uh, your other biofuels and all that. So then he talks about your aviation basically contributes 4%, and the author says that aviation is the most difficult to decarbonize, and nevertheless efforts are on, and you must also have noticed that efforts are on to replace hydrogen as the fuel in the airplanes, replace the fossil fuels with hydrogen. So this is what the article talks about. Basically, a straightforward article. Um, Now let us go to the questions. Yes. So basically, the insights from Adam Smith and David Ricardo were that even if you have an absolute advantage in production of certain goods, you should focus on the production of those goods which are in which you have a comparative advantage. You may have absolute advantage in production of a number of goods, but which is the product which you uh, which you are simply excellent in terms of quality, in terms of cost, and all parameters, you beat everyone else. Just focus on producing those goods, and don't leave the rest for the rest of the people to produce. So in this case, he takes two examples. One is Portugal and one is England. One is of England, and he tries to demonstrate by those two examples that while Portuguese have absolute advantage both in making wines as well as clothes, and they should concentrate on making wines because that is the commodity which they prepare better, and which they prepare more efficiently. So if they prepare wine uh, in 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 preference to a cloth in which they have lower comparative advantage, and the UK concentrates on producing clothes, fabric or textile, in which it may not be having an absolute advantage for the Portugal. Then in that case, if we examine the total output of for each commodity, then we will find that the total output and the number of hours spent uh, when the when the Portugal concentrates on winemaking and UK concentrates on textiles is more than when both these countries are concentrating on both the items. So, so the countries should benefit from comparative advantage, the principle of comparative advantage. That is to say, they should focus their energies on producing those goods and services in which they are most competitive, in which their quality is the best, and in which the efficiency and the economics are in their favor. And instead of producing all the goods in which they may be better than other nations. So this philosophy basically was a philosophy that promoted the globalization, that and consequent upon this philosophy, the GATT of 1947 came up. Then in 1994, it was replaced by the WTO. Now, certain developments have taken place because of which the this philosophy has not lost its appeal, but it has been relegated to the background, especially after the COVID-19, the kind of protectionism, vaccine protectionism that was seen in times of the global vaccine shortage, and how the countries reacted to that. That is vaccine nationalism, and also the changed geopolitical scenario in which there are rising tensions between China and Taiwan, and China is becoming more and more assertive in the South China Sea. So, um, so, so then, then you have um, then you have apart from the geopolitical considerations, you have the example of this chips industry, which he is taking. Chips industry basically talks about the the Taiwanese becoming the leader in this sector, and now after the US has started focusing on the chip business by increasing the tariffs, then the investment is flowing into United States. Now, whether this investment fructifies into better domestic better domestic, what we call as better prosperity in the US, that is for the time to test, and or whether it leads to a global what we call as a global disadvantage is for the time to tell, right? Chaliye aage. So basically, option one says global economy has increasingly become interconnected, making tariffs less effective. Now, which of the following, if true, would make would most weaken the author's argument about return of high tariffs? So, what is going to return or weaken the author's argument about high tariffs? So, weaken the author's argument regarding uh, shift from hyper globalization, right? So, return of high tariffs means promotion of protectionism, right? So, most weaken the author's argument about high tariffs, that the high tariffs have returned, that the world is shifting from the principles of globalization, and there is a return towards protectionism. So these arguments are going to be weakened by which of the following, right? So global economy has become increasingly interconnected, making tariffs less effective. If this is true, then will it weaken the author's argument? That is, global economy has increasingly become interconnected. Yes, we know that, and we have to presume it to be true, making tariffs less effective. So tariffs, the potency of tariffs have become less. But what is the author's argument? Author's argument is that high tariffs have returned because of geopolitical considerations. This is not the author's argument that global economy is not interconnected. It is highly interconnected, increasingly interconnected. That's all right. But then, what is the reason behind the return of tariffs? Return of tariffs, geopolitical considerations are there behind return of tariffs, right? So this seems to be missing the mark. The second one is countries around the world are adopting similar protectionist policies. That is exactly what he is saying. Return of high tariffs, that is protectionist. So what weakens? Countries are adopting similar protectionist policies. That does not go to weaken, that is just a restatement of what the author says, right? This does not weaken the argument. Or rather, this may strengthen the argument in the sense that he is just amplifying on what is written in the passage. Third is cost of high tariffs has led to economic instability in the US. If the return of tariffs causes instability, economic instability, brings about job losses, brings about inflation, brings about economic problems, then definitely this will weaken the author's argument about return of high tariffs. That means high tariffs should not return, they should go away because they are causing additional problems. tariffs were supposed to were being introduced because of the geopolitical considerations. But then the moment the return of higher tariffs also brings in its wake the invites other problems, then definitely it weakens the author's argument regarding the return of high tariffs. Then Taiwan's dominance in semiconductor production is declining. This seems to be peripheral. This does not seem to be hitting the bull's eye because he's saying which one would most weaken the author's argument about the return of high tariffs. Right. That means which is the instance out of the ones which are provided before us from A to D, which is the one which will finish off this argument of return of high tariffs. This will abolish that argument. This will weaken the author's argument about return of high tariffs. If these high tariffs bring about economic instability, then definitely this will definitely, I mean, this may override the risk posed by geopolitical tensions. The geopolitical tensions and risks may be reassessed for its worth, mainly because Russia invades Ukraine. The world leaders may come around that yes, this is a thing which is to be considered, but then this may be a one-off example. The turmoil in the Middle East, basically Middle Eastern countries, which is going on. This turmoil is in the Middle West is nothing new. This is going on for a long period of time. So they may reassess the security situation in such a situation, wherein high tariffs, the return of high tariffs because of geopolitical considerations is creating a situation of economic instability. In that scenario, they may make a more precise evaluation of whether it is worth the challenges that it brings in its wake. Do you follow what I'm saying? So therefore, C is the more appropriate answer. The central argument is that return of high tariffs has taken place because of geopolitical tensions. But then if it brings in its wake certain other problems like economic instability has the potential of changing the president. Then definitely no president would want to get changed in the middle of the before 2 terms. He will want to complete 2 terms. Most of them want to complete 2 terms. Now we have President Trump who wants the 3rd term also, which is not permissible under the US Constitution. So if this brings in economic problems in its wake, if it brings in other challenges in its wake, then the political leaders are more likely to assess or reassess the geopolitical situation instead of and temper their policies of high tariffs if this kind of situation comes about, and then reduce it, minimize it only to those areas where they face the largest kind of security challenges, and not touch the rest of the areas. That kind of policy recalibration can be understood to be coming. That means this weakens the author's argument about return of high tariffs, because high tariffs bring in their wake a lot of economic turmoil, which is not good for the administration that is there. All right, please come to 37. Yes. So basically, the US has successfully increased its share of semiconductor production. That means protectionist policies are working. Yeah, straightforward solution. If Taiwan is creating a problem, take it elsewhere. But then there may be no country which is having the dominance in this sector. Chaliye, next. Passage 8. So these days we have these tools given to us by artificial intelligence, wherein the software code which was drafted by software engineers is now drafted in very short span of time by artificial intelligence, by the tools created by the software generated by artificial intelligence. So this will lead to massive layoffs of the software engineers. And this kind of phenomenon uh, applies across the board to all the sectors. So in such a situation, what does India do with the large size of employment seeking population that it has? So by one estimate, the author says we need to create something like 90 million new jobs by 2030. So where are the jobs? On the one hand, the dilemma is that jobs have been taken away by artificial intelligence, leading to gains in productivity, but in loss of jobs. So in such a situation, when where we have a problem of plentiful youth is unemployed. So what do we do? So the article comes up with certain suggestions in this behalf. He says that this is the time when we must relearn, we must reskill, we must be open to lifelong learning, and we must be fast in in adapting to the change. And the universities and the colleges which are used to work in a structured way have to respond to the market realities and design modular courses which which are highly application oriented. And in this process, he also identifies two important aspects. One is data literacy, and another is technological orientation to everything that we do in our daily lives. So um, the technology is fast evolving. Technology is affecting almost all levels of the workforce, the highly skilled workforce, the low skilled workforce, and so on and so forth. And the only way out seems to be to be quick learners, number one, and secondly, quick teachers, so quick instructors. Our universities, our colleges, our systems should adapt to the new, to the changed scenario. That is what, and then he also says that we should excel where machines don't, or not. We should we should be able to fill the gap between what machine can do and what a machine cannot do. That is the gap for us. Basically, that requires those areas which where technology is yet to develop. For example, creativity is there. For example, empathy is there. For example, cultural things are there. So those things are basically talking about. All right, come to the questions now. First one is obviously incorrect. Job displacement is for everyone. Third one, rote learning. No, this doesn't fit the bill. Workers in low skill are the least likely to benefit from content. This is not what the article talks about. Chaliye. Come to question number 42. The first one is correct because he says jobs
Yes.
requiring empathy and creativity are becoming less common due to AI. This is exactly where he says that there is a gap and we should be able to use that gap and use humans where machines can't fit. That is what he says. Education systems are already heavily focused on technology literacy. That does not weaken the author's argument, that goes to strengthen the author's argument. Author's argument is that we should have technology literacy. And if educational systems already have that technology literacy, then that does not weaken the author's argument. That's going to strengthen the author's argument. That technological literacy and data literacy will become irrelevant as industries evolve. This seems to be contrary to the flow of the thought in the article. Technology literacy and data literacy are very relevant as industries evolve. Then majority of workers are already highly skilled in data analysis. If that is the so, that only goes to strengthen the author's argument that we require data analysis and that we require technological literacy. Therefore, first one is definitely going to weaken the author's argument because it says you have to go in for cultural factors, for empathy, for creativity, and all that. Chaliye. This is correct. This is correct. Then we come to current affairs. That means we have finished 71 today. Today we have, after striving for so long, we have today been able to achieve that we will finish uh, one paper in 2 days. So one paper in 2 days we have finished. Tomorrow we will take up 72. ठीक है बेटा?
The lecture series revolves around discussion of mock papers. You can request us for the concerned mock papers. If you intend to join us in our daily discussions, you are most welcome.